Okay, I will start now because we are there on the time. My name is Nina Odegard. I'm a PhD candidate from Oslo Metropolitan University. And I'm the chair of this session and the next session. For this first session, NAFOL EDiTE have invited Natalia B. Hansen and also Zoltan Sabo and Sheila Steger, yes. And the two last candidates will present themselves, but I will say some words about Natalia because she's the first one. She's the first one in our class that have made her defense. She had it in the 20th of April with the title Special Educational Needs Practices in Norwegian and Belarusian Preschools. The dissertation is about special educational assistance in early childhood centers. It is based on a comparative survey of special educational practice in Norwegian and Belarusian kindergartens. The purpose of the study is to contribute to a more nuanced insight into special educational practices for children in early childhood with language difficulties by describing and comparing practices from both countries. With a humble admiration and a huge congratulations, I welcome Natalia to talk about her work of becoming a doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Natalia Bogdanovich Hansen, and first I would like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to share with you my own way of doing PhD, and my presentation is based on my personal experiences, opinions, and conclusions. I hope that my own, Sheila, and Zoltan's presentation will help you to meet your challenges, survive, and win. For many people, to be a PhD fellow, it's like to win a lottery. You get salary for 3 or 4 years, guidance from an experienced researchers, participation at the different conferences, opportunity to study abroad, membership in the international and national research schools, etc., etc. At the same time, being a PhD student, you feel very smart. Everything is set for success. But, as you see, the competition rate is not so successful for many of PhD students in Norwegian context. According to the state report published by the Ministry of Education in Norway, only about 28% managed to finish PhD after 4 years, 65% after 6 years, and 35% failed to fulfill their PhD. As such, the outlook to end up with the finished PhD are not the most positive according to Norwegian statistic. I would like to say, if there is a job in the world that requires one of the highest level of motivation, is it doing PhD? The reason that I was among those 20M says a lot about my motivation. So, how it gets started? I was working full-time and taking care of 1-year-old child while working on my master thesis. And once I have finished it, I promised myself to never study and engage in academical writing again. However, for 3.5 years ago, I have been challenged and strongly encouraged to take a PhD. For many months, I have been thinking that I would absolutely not accomplish that. But here I am, a recent graduate doctor, 6 months earlier than expected. How did I keep myself motivated all these 3.5 years? So before I started, it was important to ask myself, do I need a PhD for a special job? And do I want to do PhD because I love the subject special need education? I guess if you answer yes to only one question, you could be in a difficult journey. In my case, passion for research work and teaching and the aspiration for discover and learn new things is possibly the best motivation factors for me. I have to admit that the willingness to improve career had also played a significant role. So I started. The first 6 months was a wonderful time. I have not yet experienced a situation when my scientific articles are rejected, where my results are interpreted as dodgy, time flies like an arrow, deadlines are knocking at the doors, and I have absolutely no chance to be a mother, a wife, a friend, and a woman. All these challenges brought my motivation down. Therefore, I had to take some grip. I made a list with important steps I need to follow and strived to complete all those. I have always believed and wanted my thesis to be amazing, to be my magnum opus. The truth is, I found out that PhD doesn't have to be a masterpiece. So I had a mantra. It's important to have a mantra. Keep it simple. My PhD is just a learning process. Writing thesis feels manageable and almost easy. My most important work will come later. Then I found a wonderful Russian mantra. I printed it out in a big size and clustered it on the wall in my office. And it says, do you have a goal? Go persistently toward it. Is it impossible to go toward the goal? Then creep towards it. It's impossible to creep toward the goal? At least lie down towards its direction. So these mantras help me to keep myself motivated, in some extent. Another important point is to have a strong mentor. I will stress how important this is. The mentor, I'm not talking about supervisors and not about a wonderful friend that tell you all things will be just fine and how smart you are. The mentor is a person that can give you critical feedbacks on your project, can ask provocative and difficult questions, and of course, encourage you. I was fortunate to have several colleagues in my university that were my true mentors. Take criticism and advices positively. It never hurts to have some honest assessment and support during your PhD. For improvement in any area of my work, I was open to constructive criticism. So, when I encountered people who wanted to help me to do better by correcting my flaws, I took their advice and criticism positively. On the other side, my supervisor, Svein Erik Hansen, was always saying, Natalia, look at all feedbacks with the critical eyes as well. So, during the set, I got lost, was frustrated many times, just wanted to throw my PhD out of window, burn all books and quit. So I waited for inspiration, I asked God to give me the desire to work. I felt guilty when I was with my family and friend instead of working. To help myself get away from the distraction and emotional stress, I decided to make a plan. I tried to plan my day the night before and tried to not to search for excuses. For me, to begin writing, I didn't wait for right time to do it, the right mood, or a good idea to contribute to my work. I've just got started, and time, ideas, mood came. Writing daily had become a routine for me. I closed the door, no phone, no mail, just work. So my advice is regular training and writing brings progress. I quit blaming myself when I took free from writing. Again, I followed advices from my supervisor, Svein Erik. Natalia, he said, you have a life beyond PhD. Take care of it. And suddenly, the moment when I finished my thesis, and then the disputation day, or defend day, have come. I was nervous, and at the same time, very happy. Disputation day reminded me about my wedding day. Flowers everywhere, people around me was positive, supported me, my friends, my colleagues, my family were there. The day before disputation, again, my dear supervisor said the most wise word to me. An important point, Natalia, in my opinion, is to respond as accurately as possible and only to questions asked. With some of criticism, which you think is fair and justified, you have to agree with. The criticism you do not agree with, you should be able to argument objectively. As human beings, we function best when we behave as authentically as we are. So let your own personality flourish. And the defend day, I think so, was brilliant. Is there a life after PhD research? First of all, I celebrated. I celebrated together with my family, my friends, my colleagues. Everybody were happy my return to normal life. Then I took a kind of holiday, an intellectual break. I have not opened a single book for 4 weeks. What now? I am back on track. Writing PhD has been a steep learning curve for me. And I'm inspired by academia, and now I'm back into academia and working at the Nord University. I feel privileged because I'm in conversation and cooperation about several opportunities and plans with my supervisor and my examiners. Moreover, I got an opportunity to be a NAFOL student even though I'm done with PhD. And this gave me available opportunities in meeting many professional, experienced, knowledgeable, and awesome people. Nothing can be better. Thank you.
So, dear colleagues, dear students, first of all, I would like to say thank you for your invitation. I'm really happy to be here at this conference, that I can share my experiences about my PhD training. Please let me introduce myself in a few words. My name is Zoltán András Sabo, and I'm a senior lecturer at this faculty in the Institute of Education. And in this institute, I am the member of the research group for historical, theoretical, and comparative education. It is a quite long name. My main field of interest is educational discourse analysis, both from historical and current perspectives. And besides this, as you can see in the slide, I really love new methodological approaches like text mining or computer-aided content analysis, network theory, and so on. What is maybe important that I'm also a practicing father. I have 2 little sons, a 2-year-old one and a 6-month-old one, so I can put this theoretical and historical knowledge into practice this way, and then I also can compare them too, so every field is represented by my children. As you can see in this slide, I would like to divide my presentation into 3 main parts. What should you expect before, during, and after a PhD training? And for these 3 phases, I got inspiration from a website called Upsize. You can see it in the bottom of this slide, and which is an educational site for seismologists. This Upsize. The seismology discipline deals with earthquakes and tsunamis, you know, and things like this. And this site also give advices or suggestions. What should you do if you face an earthquake? And I borrow some of these quotations for this presentation because I think that becoming a doctor is really similar to an earthquake. So you will always see these quotations at the top of these slides. And I try to connect my own experiences to these quotations. What is also important that my presentation will be really personal, so it cannot be described as an academic speech or something like this, but it's a genuine reflection to my experiences and emotions during my PhD training. So let's see the first quotation. Make up a plan of where to meet your family after an earthquake. So this is the first quotation. And my advice according to this quotation, that you have to prepare yourself, your family, your friends, your wife, and everybody that doing a PhD is a really time-consuming activity. And as you can find in the lyrics of a Hungarian song from the Hobo Blues Band, its success has no secret, it has a price. And the price is the time you could spend with your family, with your friends, in which time you could earn money, for example. So generally, PhD students should handle this time as an investment, I think so. But he or she shouldn't forget about the other values too. And because of that, if someone says that I'm thinking about PhD with these words, I'm nearly sure that he or she will never finish his or her studies. Because if you handle this PhD degree as an additional certificate or a degree, then you will realize that the necessary time is too much price for it. So a PhD student should think about what would he or she do with the PhD degree. It will be good for the academic career, or it will be good for a better position in a workplace. But PhD itself usually doesn't give enough motivation. I think it's enough about the first quotation, and let's see that what happened to me before I had applied the PhD training, and what would I suggest to you. I started to study at this university in 2005, and this is a special date because in Hungary that was the last year when you can study in an undivided system. So there were no bachelor or master's degree, but you learned a chosen discipline for 5 or 4 more years, and after you get a certificate, which is equivalent with the nowadays master's degree. And during these 5 years, I learned history and education, and I also participated in the teacher training. But in that time, the secondary schools usually wouldn't like to hire teachers with one discipline or with one major subject. And education was a really rare subject, so you cannot teach it in most of the school, or you couldn't teach it in most of the schools. So secondary school teacher as a career option wasn't really open for me. But I aimed at teaching, and I plan to deal with these disciplines, and I try to figure out that what to do. And parallelly with the university years, I was the co-founder of a talent support institute called E. Sándor College for Advanced Studies. And this way I got closer to scientific work. I could work with very talented university students who were interested in psychology and education and health studies. And it was a big input for me, which led me to choose a PhD program. Of course, there were other motivations, for example, not to leave a school because it's my comfort zone. This faculty gave me a lot of memories, and it has a really nice atmosphere, and other motivations, but this can be described as the main motivation. To tell you the truth, I was really lucky because the Doctoral School of Education offered a program called History of Education, and I realized that's my two love fields, history and education, so I applied to this program and decided that I will examine the late 19th and the early 20th century. So these were the antecedents, and let's see that what happened during the PhD training. The next quotation is stay calm. If you are indoors, stay inside. If you are outside, stay outside. And my advice seconding to this quotation, that if you decided to start a PhD, finish it. So this is my advice, because there will be a lot of pitfalls and hard periods when you wish to quit, but you have to survive. And Natalia, in her presentation, said that the first 6 months was can be described as a golden period, maybe, or something like this. But for me, not, because my first reality shock was in the first semester when I faced the fact that I have to teach in the first semester as a freshman and without any preparation, and it was a really big responsibility. But I received a lot of suggestions and other inputs from my colleagues. The next big stage was the finalization of the research plan, because after the first semester we have to specify our topic, and I choose the deconstruction process of the Hungarian tripartite secondary school system. I would not like to introduce this topic in depth, but that was the title of my PhD dissertation. And I decided to analyze the preparation of this school reform and try to heal some relationships with quite novel methods like content analysis or network analysis, which are unusual methods in the field of history of education. And I think that the second and the third years were more or less easier than the first year for me, so I get a pre-degree certificate. Although these years were easier for me in the PhD training, I think that it was much harder to work besides my studies, because I was a fee-paying student in that time. So I started as a research assistant at the university, and since the end of 2012, I worked parallelly at the university and in the Hungarian Institute for Educational Research and Development, where I started as an intern, and then I became a full-time researcher analyst. And after the reduction of this institute's size, I came back to the university and I became a full-time assistant lecturer. From a professional point of view, these years were really good. I was productive, I write a lot of papers, but there was a big pressure on me to finish my PhD dissertation, and this process was really, really slow. But after 6.5 years, I tabled the final version of my writing in the previous year, and my public defense was in June, and I received my PhD certificate in April, this year, so I waited almost 1 year for the certificate. As I said earlier, this way has a lot of pitfalls, but when I found PhD comics, what you can see at this slide, it helped me a lot, so I highly recommend it to everyone. You can find it at phdcomics.com. Natalia also put a picture from this comics into her presentation. Because I'm a little bit out of time, the final phases after the PhD training, the quotation is, expect aftershocks. Because PhD is a never-ending story, and it will always come back in your nightmares. You should give time yourself to rest comfortably. And I have to say that in my case, this time wasn't too long because I won 2 scholarships. The first one was an individual one. I can spend 1 month in Berlin in the Bibliothek für Bildungsgeschichtliche Forschung, or Research Library for the History of Education. And I analyzed the diffusion of educational discourses in Central Europe, or more precisely, the impacts of German and Austrian reform dialogues on Hungarian education policy in the first half of the 20th century. The second scholarship was a collective one called Central College, maybe in English, and it examines cultural interactions among Central European capital cities. It was a comparative analysis of the school systems of Berlin, Budapest, Prague, Vienna, and Warsaw between the 18th and the 21st century. And then, as planned, we would like to continue this collaboration, this Central College, so we applied again in this year, and we try to intensify this cooperation as much as possible. I would also recommend this Central College. I think it's a really excellent opportunity for PhD students to work with BA or MA students, or with other supervisors, so I highly recommend it to everyone. And accordingly, I would suggest to find after the PhD, international and domestic opportunities. There are a lot of announcements, scholarships for postdocs. And my second advice, if you have a PhD in educational science or some related field like teacher education, then you also have to prepare yourself for very weird questions like PhD in educational science, really? What's your opinion about nowadays public education system and something like this? So you have to prepare yourself, because everybody thinks that you are an expert in every questions of education. And in Hungary, everybody's an expert in football, education, and politics. So you have to, so you have to prepare. Finally, my next name is the habilitation. It's a scientific title or degree. Ms. Chepa talked about this scientific title too. So I hope that after a few years I can share my experiences about my habilitation thesis at the same place. So thank you very much for your attention.
Dear colleagues, I found it weird to have a presentation about my life and my personal experiences on PhD, so I didn't prepare a presentation. I just wish to speak about who I am, and probably I am invited here because I am the atypical doctoral student and atypical doctoral PhD holder. So I am Csilla Steger. I am a vice president of the Educational Authority in Hungary, and I'm responsible for the side for higher education. We don't really work with teacher education, but my real interest is in teacher education and in higher education management. So these are my fields. I'm an economist. I've done a bachelor and a master in economics, and that is not a really typical thing in Hungary, because at the time there were not supposed to be any bachelors and masters, but my university offered them, so I took them. I'm wondering when they will withdraw probably my basic degrees, because that was weird at the time. But anyway, that's my background. I worked all my life really in higher education administration. I worked at Pécs, which is southwest of Hungary. That's where I used to live. And I worked there at the University of Pécs, did managing of European Social Fund projects there. And I was quite efficient in that. And the Eötvös Loránd University saw my work, and I was invited to appeal for the job of the director for academic affairs at Utrecht University. So we moved with my whole family, my 2 kids and my husband, to Budapest, and I became the head of academic affairs here in Utrecht University for 2 years. That was quite an experience for me, coming from far away and seeing all the big city, the most prestigious university, and how management is done at the rector's level. That was quite an experience also because I was sitting in a senate of the most prestigious Hungarian university, and there was this flashboard behind me, well, actually in front of me. The rector was sitting in front of me and the vice rectors, and everyone was a PhD on the list except me. I was the only regular member of the Senate without a PhD, and that was the first time when I was like thinking really deeply about I should get a PhD if I want to work in higher education, even if I want to work in higher education management. People will not respect me and they will not talk to me as equals if I don't have a PhD. Then I don't know one of the biggest and most important products higher education has. So that was the first time when I really thought I should have a PhD. Of course, this was not enough as a motivation. And once I finished working for the Utrecht University, I moved, well, we haven't moved, I changed jobs and I went to work to the ministry. I worked in the Ministry of Education, and I became responsible for programs, content and outcome description of programs, and teacher education. I was sent as a delegate to the European Commission's teacher policy working group, and that was quite a huge experience for me. That's where I met a lot of the international colleagues, and I had a wonderful 8 years there, and that gave me the motivation and the thought that I could do a research about teacher education, initial teacher education within Europe. At the time, Hungary has just been through a reform in initial teacher education, the Bologna process reforms, and it was quite controversial. There were huge debates in Hungary at the time about the Bologna type teacher education, and lots of people said there's too much pedagogy, and then other people said there's too much science, and then other people said there's too much practice. And I was wondering, what is too much? How can something be too much or too little, and compared to what? And what are the other countries doing? How are they doing their Bologna type teacher education? What is happening in teacher education because of the Bologna process? So that was my main interest. And since I was responsible for kind of as an analyst in the ministry on teacher education, and the wind was already for a new reform in initial teacher education, I thought it would be very important for me to finish my dissertation. I was really naive enough to think that the ministry would read the research, actually, and then they would make decisions based on data. Well, it didn't really happen, but this was my real motivation to enter into the PhD in 2008, and I finished in 2012, and Professor Halász was my mentor. And we did the research, and I finished my PhD. I think I wouldn't talk that much about the experience itself, but it was extremely tiring for me, extremely. I can't really put it into words because I had a full-time job in the ministry, and in 2011 I went to work in the Educational Authority, and that was more than a full-time job that I had as a job. And plus that I had the research, and plus I had 2 kids and a family to attend to. So actually I don't think I slept too much during those 3 years to be able to finish the whole thing. But I finished the whole thing, and I think I made the first comparative research of 28 systems and the result of the Bologna process on initial teacher education. I was the first to do that, not the European Commission or not the OECD, so I was really proud of it, though I think I made real small impact because I published everything in Hungarian and I published everything in English just 2 years later. So by that time, my data wasn't that interesting anymore. Anyway, I finished my PhD, and by that time I was working at the Educational Authority. Since most of you come from another country, you might not know what the Educational Authority is. It's a background institution to the ministry, and Hungary is a Central Eastern European country. It's quite centralized. We have a lot of educational big processes that are done centrally, such as application to higher education. Bachelor's and master's degrees are done centrally, so you have to apply to the Educational Authority and list your universities and courses. This is one of the things that we manage, and I'm responsible for centralized application procedure. Also, we run the central higher education registry. There's a registry of institutions and programs. It sounds really boring, but it's not. And we also have a registry for the people, the students themselves and the staff. In 2011, it was during my PhD work, and I was in the middle of finishing my survey type questionnaire, which was the third part of my PhD, and then writing the dissertation. And at that time, in 2011, my boss just announced on a conference that there's Csilla there, and she will redo the Hungarian higher education registry, and it will be done until 2012 September. And I was in shock, and we had to do it, and, and actually we managed to do it with the cooperation of colleagues. So this was, I still don't know how we managed all these. So we did the higher education registry. We completely redid the whole thing parallel with my PhD. We also have in the educational authority a lot of centralized administrative stuff, tasks like career tracking of students. We don't do survey type of career tracking only. We do survey type, which is a qualitative research with the help and with the aid of higher education institutions, but we also do an administrative database linking kind of research. So that's also something that belongs to me. So actually, after I finished my PhD, I realized all the potential of everything that exists in Hungary data-wise. I think what I realized was that a PhD in educational science can also be a PhD about the system and a PhD about big data analysis. And there are so many positions available, and there's so much to do on system level monitoring and system level data analysis. There's a whole world opening up apart from survey type of work, but work based on administrative databases. We have data on 4 million people. We have data on school education. We have data on higher education from kindergarten to PhD. Why there's dropout, how many, what are their characteristics, in what subject fields, who are the successful, what are their characteristics. And we also have tons of amount of data on the staff, which university is what. There's so much to research, and I'm sure this doesn't only exist in Hungary, but it exists in other countries also. So with my colleagues, we use a lot of business intelligence, BI, and a lot of PhD holders. We have established a unit for higher education analysis. So we are looking forward to receive new doctorates and students who know how to analyze big databases and help support policymaking based on data. Actually, this was really, I think this has changed in Hungary since before 2011, there was not much data, and data was not really reliable. Now we have very hard and very reliable data. Now policymakers start to learn how to use our data. I'm not saying they're basing their decisions on our data, but they're taking our data into account when they make decisions, and that's a great and wonderful opportunity to affect change on system level. And we do need a lot of well-educated people who understand the basics of education and understand how it works and have all the methodology important to draw the right conclusions. So I would really, really encourage you not to give up, because it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really time-consuming, but don't give up. Go through with your PhDs, and I hope that most of you or some of you will choose fields that are connected with system-level issues, because those are also very important. So I wanted to draw your attention there. If I would have to sum up on my experience, what were the key elements? I think one of the key elements was be focused, to know exactly where you want to go, and never lose your focus. Even though there are a lot of people telling you things and a lot of people sharing their ideas with you, don't lose your own focus. If you lose your focus, then you will lose your motivation. When you have your motivation, you know what you want to do, don't lose the focus, because then it's not going to be efficient. And then that's the second thing, be efficient. You don't have all the time. And I really do hope that there will be a lot of other students also, students who are working and doing their PhD, not just doing their PhD. It was tough just doing the PhD, but if you're working and doing a PhD, that's really, really challenging, and it's doable. And if you're not efficient, it's really, it will take a long time, and then you might lose your motivation. So that's one of the issues. And then time management. You have to excel in time management and use every day to be better at time management and do the things that are important, and don't waste your time on the not important things, because they will not get you moving forward. Focus on the important and keep it up, and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Yes. I'll try to sum this up before we have panel discussion. Through this session, we have learned to have a mantra. And actually, we had to crawl towards the mantra. Stay calm, but prepare for earthquakes, and then expect aftershocks. Make better resolutions with better solutions. Never lose your focus. Know your motivations. Don't sleep. Do a lot of important stuff on the side. And prepare for a PhD hangover. The second session is a panel discussion on becoming a doctor with freshly graduated students. In addition to those we already heard from, I welcome moderator Luís Tinoca, who is an assistant professor at the Institute of Education, University of Lisbon. Luís is, according to Academia Edu, an active researcher in the areas of teacher education, competence-based learning assessments, and group work collaboration in online environments. He earned his PhD from the University of Texas in Austin in 2004. That's right? Yeah? Okay, bom dia, professor. Bem-vindo? Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Nina. I will try to use a little bit of technology to engage the audience. Let's see if this works. Okay. Okay. Okay, so thank you, Nina, and also Chila, Natalia, and Zoltan for sharing your experience. We all know that this is often one of the most difficult tasks that we have throughout our career, and it's also always very unexpected. What we imagine it's going to be, it's never actually the way it's going to be. So I like this. I love PhD comics. I used it back from 2000 when I started my PhD. When I found it, I became an addict of it. It has lots of good insights into what it is to become a PhD student. And then as you transform, you'll start seeing the other side of the professor. So that's also very interesting. So a very difficult path that we see before us. And we seem to always be working. This is a very recent one. I don't know if you've seen this one. It's like 2 or 3 weeks ago about what is summer when we are in academia, what people think summer is, and what summer actually is. So it's one of the times that we work the most. Okay, so my idea for this discussion is to try to engage the audience. So my first task for you is to go online, go to menti.com, and with one word, describe what is your experience as a doctoral student. If you had to choose only one word, which word would it be? And I will jump it here at the same time so that we can see what people are saying. Okay. If you have to say just one word what it is to be a doctoral student, which word would you choose? The code, oh, it's too big, sorry. 310592. Wait, I'll put it back like this. 310592. Okay, let me put it back here. It's actually not shown. Oh. Okay, so we have stressful, very big, exhausted, sleepless. It's okay. Stamina, stressed, engaged, exciting, pressure, explorer. Being an explorer. That's an interesting analogy. Stamina, it requires a lot of stamina. A roller coaster, that's a good idea too. A zombie, so the part about not sleeping. Eye-opening, enjoyment too, challenging. So we have lots of interesting metaphors related to what it means to be a PhD student. My first challenge to the three of you here would be, you've already said a little bit about which strategies were you using. If you choose 2 or 3 of these topics, and I would ask that you choose different ones, which strategies would you recommend them to use to deal with those 2 or 3? Okay? Oh, thank you, sorry. So thank you. So if you choose 2 or 3 of those, and we can go in any particular order, we can start this way, and then for the next question, we'll do it the other way around, okay?
The Power of Positive Thinking. It was my favorite book in a night table while I was writing PhD. And I was really learned to think positive. So I would choose the pressure. I would choose enjoyment, and I will choose creative. Because you really have a chances to work with something you do love, you do want to it sounds expensive. Yeah. Can I just continue? And creative, because you have opportunity to make something new. So think positively. Stress is coming and go, but think about the opportunities you have within all this year.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have to choose three of them, or maybe 2 or 3. Yeah, maybe the first one is people becoming fat. Maybe it's unfair with my type, but I would say that you should eat healthy, even if it's sometimes you have to put a lot of energy to find healthy foods and something like this, but no junk foods, something like this. And the second one is publish or perish, which is a often quoted sentence in the case of academia. I would suggest to publish articles and and chapters, and you can avoid the problem of perish. Maybe that would be.
Any particular strategy you use?
To publish? I don't think so. I totally agree with Natalia that you have to sit down and write your article. So I have no special strategy to write an article, but maybe this one.
If you have the possibility to join a course how to write academical articles, so please do it, because it's a lot of knowledge you can get through these courses, and you get some good tip how to do it, how to choose academical journal, to form your article, and it will help you on your way. And of course, we are a part of NAFOL, and we are continually get this information how to publish. So just do it.
Yeah, and maybe an additional information, and you can publish before you start your PhD studies. So, for example, you can join for a students' scholars cycle, colleges for advanced studies, or something like this. And this way, you can publish before you start your PhD, and you have this advantage.
Thank you. Sheila?
I chose challenging, and I think let's not be afraid of challenges, and don't be afraid to choose a topic or a theme that motivates you, even if it's challenging and you have absolutely no idea how you will tackle it. Don't worry, you'll tackle it. And then that's why I chose the second one, be creative, because you chose something very challenging, and then just try to think about it, about your theme and your motivational issues out of the box, and try to come up with creative ideas of how to do it. And then you will surely be able to do it, because you will come up with something that no one's ever done, and then it's going to be fun, and it will give you some extra motivation. So that's my suggestion. And then I chose timeless because time is a constant issue, and that's why it's not an issue all the time that you sacrifice for a PhD, and then you can do it fast. I don't think 3 years is fast, but it is fast compared to many. I mean, you have to survive those 3 years, but if you make your decision that you want to have your PhD, then forget about being negative on time. Yeah, spend your time on your PhD. Don't worry about it. This is what you wanted to do, so all the time should go to your PhD, because that was your decision, and don't go back on your decision. So those are my suggestions.
Thank you, Chile. Thank you. Yes, Josephine? Yes, definitely.
Thank you, first of all three of you. I think it's been fascinating to hear you. And I think one of the things that really has impressed me is the positive view you have, all of you. And I suppose that is one of the reasons why you have completed, because you are positive about the whole process. You don't see only the downs, but you see the ups. There's one thing that I would like to say, which might be strange for those who are not coming from Norway. Most of the PhD students in NAFOL, they are employed by their university for 4 years. They are employees. And that means that they have the right to working hours and to vacations and things like that. That is not the way. If you think that way, I don't think that is the right way to think in order to complete your PhD. Because even though you are employed, it is 24/7, more or less, during the days or the period of your time. So I think we should take that into consideration as well.
Thank you, Carrie. Josephine wanted to make a comment?
Thank you very much to the three presenters. Congratulations on your excellent performances. I just wanted to say that I feel there's a slight imbalance in categories and how we measure success here. And I would like to say that it is also a matter of solidarity within a group, and that I feel within this final year that we're all in, and within the pressures and the fears that we're facing, there's not anybody in our group that is not determined to finish. And since inclusion and kind of different speeds and different ways of approaching a task is something that is also a very important quality standard, I would like to say that if somebody chooses to extend their time and not finish in 3 years, then that is also a strong sign of commitment to quality. And I think that for our community within the EDiTE, I think it matters to finish, that all of us finish, regardless in which time, and that there are personal pressures that need to be taken into account, and it's beautiful how you manage them, and it's wonderful. But I don't want to leave this here thinking that if people do not finish within 3 years, then that they have not acquired excellence in this program. Yeah.
And any more comments or questions over there?
I'm also from EDiTE, and I'm from Poland. I want to support what Josephine has just said and reflect, and I mean congratulate those wonderful success stories that we could hear a moment ago. But the imbalance that Josephine was talking about, I think it's important to address the issue of the problems that people have and how they handle. And as far as I know that European Commission is also very much involved and knows about the not emerging but burning issue of mental health problems of doctoral students, and they are just consequence of lots of service through national associations are being done now. But the research so far is very disturbing, and the data is really sad. It's all result of complex problems, personal issues, family issues that you mentioned, but also the pressure. Look, it's the first thing that is here visible. Instability, stress, and a lot of things that were mentioned here. I can imagine precarious conditions as well, right? So most of the countries and the PhD candidates, doctoral candidates do not have access to employment or career development, as in the case of postdocs. The status of students, why are they in many countries called students? I mean, we are in our early stage careers, we are researchers in our early stage careers. So we are doctoral candidates, not students. We are working really hard, and you know, with all those problems, like for example, in Portugal, I know there's a problem of visibility of researchers in what is it, national research and development policies. With Poland, we have higher education reform. With for example, Lithuania, there is an emerging problem, probably burning problem of, as in many countries, the Netherlands as well, of the leaving of the researchers leaving academia right after, like 50% of them leave right after they get their PhDs. And maybe if some of them get grants, so they are successful for a few years. Like what I am saying and giving you examples of is the many problems that we face, and actually I would love to and this forum is very interesting for me, especially the talks that we have behind the scenes, how people cope with these issues and these problems. And just wanted to contribute to this. Sorry for the chaotic and emotional tone, but this is what I feel and think.
Thank you, Beate. Well, I'll try to move us along, okay? If I had to choose my own words here, I would choose focus on the one hand and resilience on the other hand. So it's important not to be too wide and too open to new input that is always coming. You have to be critical about it, and then on the other hand, you have to be resilient too. So those would be my 2 words. Okay, my next challenge to you, you've already seen it many times because it keeps trying to go forward, is what do you think are your next challenges as young researchers, future graduates in a few months? What do you see as your next challenges? What do you see, and challenges can also be opportunities. And what other things would you like us to comment on? So feel free to input as you would like the conversation to go. I think this would be an important thing to think about. What do you perceive as things that you have to face in the coming months? And then we'll see what advice we can get from here. Here you can write a little bit more. It doesn't have to be just a word. You can write a sentence. Yes, of course.
I think that what is happening in the academia throughout the world, and at least in Norway, I know also in many, many other places in Europe, I know you have this in Australia as well, that the academia is producing more PhD people than you have places for at the university. And one of the things that we are talking about in Norway, specifically our university, that is that we prepare that at least 50, if not 60% of the PhD graduate shall get a job outside the academia. So it is one of our responsibilities have been in the PhD program now to start preparing people for working outside the academia with a PhD. There are more and more associations, there are more and more public offices, there are more and more schools, etc., that would like to have a PhD person involved. Innovation is a word that we hear quite a lot about. Who are the people who are going to innovate? The various businesses, the various organizations, the various other initiatives. These are people with a creative mind and who knows how to research. So I think this is also something that we just have to expect, that not everybody will have a position at the university when they finish their PhD. But it doesn't mean that they wasted their PhD, on the contrary. And I think that the fact that once everybody with a PhD should go and get a job at university, that is passé. That is outdated now. But so we have to change our minds and think differently. So I think that is just in response maybe a bit to what you said and also to the next challenges and opportunities.
That's a very good point. And I think we had 2 very good examples. Chilo on one hand and Hannah on the other hand in the morning. As we have all realized, she's a good example of someone who did a PhD and is working in a different capacity, well, not in academia, but who's bringing her skills that she got through her PhD into very important contexts. So this should be more and more one of the possible positions for you in the future. I'll give it to...
I don't need it. No, I was just going to say, we actually talked about this at dinner the other night, where my background is, I'm from the US, where there's actually 2 different routes in doctorates, where here it seems to be there's just one when it comes to education, which is the PhD, where in the US there's actually a practitioner's doctorate, an educational doctorate is what it's called, an EDD. And that's the US's answer, I think, or at least an answer to thinking differently on the approach to a doctorate and what it can be used for. So I think if you're curious, that's something to look up to really see how this can be used for practitioners' approach. So that was it.
And to add to what Carrie said, I completely agree with you. And the credentialism is omnipresent in many fields and environments and professions. What the specific problem with PhD candidates is and postdocs is that there is lack of training and lack of support now in the doctoral schools and the system, higher education system, for the training so that the people, when they enter business careers or leave academia, so they are actually prepared for that. So this is the issue right now within Europe. And also one more thing, I think the academia is not prepared, and then the people, the candidates, when they enter the academia for their PhDs, they are not aware of the fact that only 30% of them will stay.
Thank you very much. I would come back to you, our three guests again, and ask you to comment on this. So we have many possible challenges. We also have some of them that were brought by the contribution we just had, like the one that makes reference to working in different contexts right now, or any of the others that came up on the board. So any strategies? Let's start this way, right? Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kari and with you on being prepared not to only work in academia. I think academia is really important, and I'm sure most of you have intentions to work in academia, but life doesn't end after academia. There are wonderful projects going on, and I think the whole 21st century is about collaboration and is about interdisciplinary studies and fields meeting with each other, and I'm absolutely sure that academic research and policy making are meeting all over the world, and this is one of the areas, and businesses and science meet all the time with innovations, and there are just so many opportunities. You have to keep your mindset open, your mind open, and you have your scientific mindset and learn the environment where you will be working, business or anything else, a service or civil work or any kind of work. You learn the environment and you have your scientific mindset, and then you will be able to contribute with knowing both. Now you learn the scientific side, and then life will teach you the other side, and be open to learn, and then you will be able to contribute. And what I really liked in those next challenges and opportunities, I really like the ones connected with dissemination. Writing is one of the things, but also other types of dissemination and conferences and meetings and sharing your results with others. It's very important. And I think I didn't do that right at the time, so I just really want to emphasize that this is probably the most important. If you have a result, you made your dissertation, you wrote things down, you had your articles, talk about it, be proud of it, and share it, go to conferences and be really ready to share and talk about it. It's very important.
Thank you. I saw a lot of elements on this slide which is or which are connected to time, maybe, so time management or something like this. And my advice that if you are a PhD student or working human or anything, you have to find time management system, and besides this, a resource management system where you can manage your resources. It was a really big problem for me too, and maybe nowadays it's also a problem for me. But if you do not find time management system or resource management system, then you will function as maybe as a headless chicken, you know. So this is a really important thing what I could advise.
Do you have a specific recommendation or strategy
yes,
or program?
There are very popular time management system. It's the GTD, or is it Get Things Done? Maybe you heard about it, and I think it's really good because it you always start your day with the morning planning phase when you try to plan your day, and besides this, you can think in projects or bigger to-dos. But it is really good because in a relatively calm period, the morning, you can plan your day. I would recommend this GTD system maybe.
I choose to research more and to teach and supervise. Looking forward to it, I do. Maybe I'm one of luckiest person in the world because I have a job and I'm teaching in special need education and I love it. And I continue with my research. I collaborate with a lot of wonderful people. I'm trying to make a lot of contacts. And you have just to don't be afraid to open up for several possibilities. As Kari said, you don't need to work in academia. I do, but if not so, we have several possibilities in community. You can work in at the specialized, I'm talking about my field, special education. We have a lot of specialized centers. When a lot of people with PhDs working here, you have possibility to make research and to work with children and parents. So why not to apply for a job in abroad? Welcome to us, to North Norway. We need the people. So try to see opportunity in every challenge. Despite bureaucracy, it's a lot of bureaucracy in Norway as well. We have as well a lack of support, a lack of supervisors. We need time, we need to publish. It's hard pressure to publish, to research, to teach. So just, yeah, it's quite difficult to explain, but you have to be positively tuned in on your opportunities.
Thank you, three of you. I would now fully open to you to see which other comments you'd like to make or questions you'd like to raise or issues that you'd like us to comment about. So it's completely on your side now.
Everybody feels cooked.
You know, whenever I have a chance to have a microphone and speak, one of the things I think that is important, that the next step is that you maintain the network you have created already. That is one of the things that we have learned from NAFOL, that the networks that are created during their PhD period, to maintain these networks, to initiate projects together, to initiate the writing of books together, etc., etc. I think this is extremely important because in a network like EDiTE and in NAFOL, you have created a network, hopefully, of trust. And you can, maybe not all of you all together, but that you can work together and develop. Don't isolate yourself back in your own institution after that, because then I think then we are going a bit against what we really want to do, and that is to go networking. So I hope that in 2 years or something like that, I'll be asked to review a research proposal by EDiTE and NAFOL students on some field, etc., etc. I'm looking forward to it.
I just want to continue with the network question. I am a first-year PhD student here at EDiTE here. I'm thinking that how can we keep the relationship or the network with this university when we graduate? If we go back to our country, then if there is no cooperated programs between us, how can we maintain the network? It is really difficult. And also, from my personal experience, I think it's a little bit difficult to think in a European way. Sometimes when we're understanding a specific or research subject, it is emotionally, you will have your personal opinion from your personal knowledge. So how can we overcome this? And more, as an international student, I really don't know how to cope with the relationship between academic life and the personal life. Here, I have almost no personal life because I don't have relatives or families or even friends. Oh, I have friends, but but I almost lost myself, and even I lost my culture, my own culture. I seems like I'm a mixture of European culture and the Chinese culture. It is a little bit strange. I'm sometimes a little bit struggling. So how can we deal with this situation?
And also mix of different countries.
So we finish with the easy question. But it's a question that many of you are experiencing because you're doing research not in your own culture. Hannah there? You have to answer this.
I would like to say something to you, that this is what you're talking about. That's part of being a researcher, a PhD student. I come from Finland. I work in Norway, and I have been working in Iceland and Finnish Finland and Swedish Finland. And you're always between cultures, and you have different ways of thinking, but it keeps you so alert. You become so sensitive for impulses, so you are building like a global community. If you just had been taking your studies in your own country, you wouldn't have experienced this insecurity, not having good friends, trying to be just very good at what you're doing. But that's part of something very, very good. And I would like to say about me, I have been in Norway now 22 years, coming from Finland, and experienced Finland's success in school and academization. But now there are many Finns, they want to get abroad, to get a larger community to be in. So it's always an issue about the brain drain. Where are the brains going in here? And the university I serve now, NTNU, the Norwegian University of Technology and Science, when you look at the promotion twice a year of new PhDs, over 200, about half of them are from other countries. And the rector of the university said, this is Norway, a rich country. We have free PhD studies, we have free education, so we can invite other countries to come and take the PhD and go back to their own country again, or stay in Norway if they want to. So the situations are different, but when you are in academia, you are international. There's no way to be just national.
Thank you. I'm also multicultural. I'm from Belarus, and Russian is my mother tongue, and I'm living in Norway for 15 years, and getting to be well integrated, and sometimes feel Norwegian as well. So when I was making my PhD, I had a comparative study. So I was feeling who I am. I have to identify myself. And look positively at it. You can research in many countries. You can research in your country. You can make research in this country you are studying. So possibility is wider. It's several opportunities to make some contacts. And people do want to cooperate. You just have to maybe to make a first step, to write a mail, to make a call. Do not be afraid to be rejected. Or what so if you are? Try the next one.
I think I have. Could I go? Yeah. So sorry to take up space again, but this is for us, right? So I'm going to just say that I think the European Doctorate in Teacher Education has the motto of research for social change, and it means building, having the vision of having an impact on the research with the research that we're doing. And we have lots of researchers that are coming from outside of Europe to the European countries that we're doing our doctorate in. And also for us, we had to change countries. And we learned languages, different languages. We tried to become parts of the research cultures in different languages, different countries. And I think that this kind of is so much more than a PhD dissertation that we are profiting from. So I would just like to stress that that's not all there is. Going through the finishing line is, of course, the reason why we started this, but we wouldn't have joined EDiTE if we hadn't been in for more than that, and for a vision of finishing together and finishing with an extraordinary experience of European interculturalism. And I think that the strength of this European project really is that we get to know each other's cultures, and that we have a vision for teacher education within Europe. And I think that, we should not lose this in the evaluation of the success of this project.
Thank you. Carrie here, and then behind Josephine. And then we'll come back to the table. Thank you.
I'll just be very quick, and I'm related to our colleague from China. I myself, and here we have personal confessions. I left Norway. I'm born and bred in Norway. Left when I was 18. Went to Israel and have my whole academic education from Israel. Became professor there, was the dean of teacher education there, and then came back again to Norway, and has brought quite a lot of what I did and learned in Israel with me back to Norway, and vice versa. I had a hybrid position for quite some years, part in Israel, part in Norway, and I've been working internationally all the time. Sabbatical in Australia, in New Zealand, in the Netherlands. I have friends all over the world. I have colleagues all over the world. And that has made me a very rich person, because I had to learn about so many other cultures. And I know even in NAFOL, I'm looking at Elizabeth, we have quite a few students like that as well. So see it as a gift you have been given, and not as a burden.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexandra, and I'm a first-year PhD student. And in my experience, I can say that I try to build my way as a researcher and try to manage and control myself. And for me, it's like really first experience to be a researcher. And I want to ask you about what do you think about the role of project management in PhD programs, and should be project management included in PhD programs?
Thank you. So we have, I think, 3 minutes, 2 minutes about that. So 1 minute for each for final reactions. Okay.
If I understand your question well, it was that you should we introduce project management as a subject into the PhD programs or something like this? Yes, I'm not sure. I think a lot of PhD programs are organized by the structure of the discipline, and not always so pragmatic to introduce project management or subjects like this. So I think that because of this, these programs, I'm not sure that can fulfill these requirements of project management, although it is really important, of course.
Just a few words. Of course, project manager will maybe help you to keep your structure and to see progression in your work. We are so lucky we have NAFOL. It's working like a project manager for us. So we're all the time getting a lot of work to do, and this work is built on the progress of your PhD. But in Norway, we don't have this as a subject, if I understood as you understand it. But we have a supervisors, and in collaboration with them and with the colleagues, so you can make it your own project management. Yeah.
Yeah, if this is our final round on project management, I think it's very important. I think I do it all the time. That's what my life is about. And I think that's what your life is about. You just have to look at your life with different glasses. You're managing your PhD. You're project managing. That's your project now. You're managing your project. So you're learning by doing. So that I don't believe in classes. You learn by doing things. Don't wait for classes. Just read it on the net and take a book or go see a film, or and look at it project management wise. It's going to be very useful. I think psychology and people and connection with people is the other thing that's going to be very, very, very useful in your whole life. How you connect with people, how you keep them motivated in the collaboration or cooperation that you're doing. That's going to be the other key issue. These will be required, but I don't think you can learn them in class. You learn them by doing them.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you to the three of you for your openness, for your transparency, for sharing your experience. I think this was enriching to all of us.